call this meeting to order. Appreciate everybody being here tonight. Just want to remind everyone that this is a regularly scheduled meeting. The date, time, and place of the meeting has been posted or given to the local news media, has been given to each member of the governing body and was posted on the city webpage and the state public meetings webpage. To begin, we'll go ahead and start with roll call. Councilman Labrum is out of town at a concert tonight with his significant other, so we'll excuse him tonight. Councilman White. Here. Councilman Baird. Here. Councilman Waite. Here. And Councilman Burdick. Here. Okay. We've asked our city manager to give us an opening prayer, and after that, we'd ask everyone to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank Thee for our opportunity to be here to serve the public. We are grateful for Thy kindness, for Thy help in our community. We are grateful for the many wonderful people that we have, wonderful process that this country has been blessed with. We ask that Thou would please bless this meeting, that it might be able to be led and guided by Thy Spirit. That those things that are discussed might be the best for the residents, the people that live here. And bless the staff, those that serve the council, mayor, that they might be able to serve and help. And they might be able to have the strength and knowledge they need to keep our public safety. Staff, they might be able to be kept from harm and accident. We said in the name of Jesus Christ.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, Mayor. Should we switch? All right. We want to remind everyone we do have a comment period at the beginning of each. Well, actually, let's go to our minutes first. I did notice there was something in the minutes. It may have been changed or fixed by then because I couldn't see the but does anyone else see any changes or amendments to the minutes as presented?
What page were you on? Do you remember?
I reported some to Carolyn, so she probably thinks what
That's probably what it was. Yeah, I couldn't remember because I lost my one, but I don't see it now. So, any others that anyone sees? Seeing none, would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion by Councilman Waite and a second by Councilman White. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Now we'll move on to the public comment period. We have, this period it gives the opportunity to the public to, if they have a concern or a comment that they'd like to make, they would have up to 3 minutes. And if you would, if you do have a comment, please come and address the council here. Are there any here that would like to take that opportunity tonight? Seeing none, we'll move forward. And I apologize, my voice is not very good right now. I'm trying to get over a cold. I'm not contagious, by the way, but hopefully. So the first item we have, non-commercial airport hangar lease agreement. I called Shad Fields and talked to him a little bit, and I think, Ryan, do you want to just talk to this a little bit, or?
Yeah, sure.
We discussed it a little earlier.
Yeah. No, at this point, he has purchased a hangar from somebody else, and instead of assuming those leases, we just put the current approved lease in it. And so it's here to sign it. It just needs their signature. Whether you want to have a motion to do that or just sign it, it's really up to you.
For me, the rates and the things that are set in the agreement are there. I don't see that there's any need to make a motion, but if anybody feels the need, we can do that. Otherwise, I will sign it regardless. So
It's fine.
All right. Just an item of note, I think part of that was there has been some conversation looking at those. There are some few loose ends, or not even loose ends, just things that we're looking at, and maybe that's what sparked it to come on. But as we work through those and those become before the council, then we'll look at those at that time. But as for now, this moves forward as is. Next, we have a resolution, 2019-296. This is establishing an authorized organization representative for the EDA funding. That's been in the packet for the council. And hope everyone has taken an opportunity to read that. Would you like to explain a little bit on this?
Yeah. So what we're doing, if you remember, we've been working with Merchant McIntyre to get grants. We've built the application and got through a lot of the process.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've noticed the wait. There is
I
one
brought
more.
that up today.
Okay.
Yeah.
But at this point, it is, you are to the point we can submit our application. We just need to be able to commit funds for our portion. Our intent is that we would submit it once EDA approves it, we hope. Then at that point, we'll take it to CIB and see if we can get additional funds there, and be able to have them fund. We'd still like to be able to earn 70 to 80% grant funding, that's our hope. So, but we're moving forward on this, so this is just to authorize, at this point it's worded, to authorize me to commit to those funds. Obviously, until the project actually starts, we don't have to outlay any funds. So we'll go to CIP next, but this is our first step, so.
And so then,
Are there any questions?
so this acknowledges you as the organizational representative, authorized organizational
For
representative.
this particular grant funding application.
And I agree that would best be done. I've looked into the way those grants are done online, and I agree that it's probably best that you hold that position for this.
Any other questions or items of discussion? There are two, and I think we already discussed them. Your name is misspelled.
Oh, I didn't.
Yeah.
Oh,
So as part of the motion, we just need to make sure that those are
well, I
identified.
think, so it said in the second paragraph or third paragraph on number one.
Oh, it's
it
just
says Mr. Snow
grammatical
is, and
error.
there's no space in between Snow is. It's
It looked like snow is
not a huge deal. And then
And then
you
the
probably
second-
caught the city name. Okay.
So if no other further discussion, would entertain a motion to approve that based on the corrections.
I'll make the motion to approve that with those
Okay.
corrections.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion by Councilman Burdick and second by Councilman Wade. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Next item is the Roosevelt City Redevelopment Agency meeting. So we are going to suspend, that's a better word for it, right? Suspend our normal council meeting at this time and would entertain a motion to move into our redevelopment agency meeting.
A motion.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilman Baird,
Second.
second by Councilman White. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll now consider ourselves in the redevelopment agency meeting to discuss resolution 2019-01, and that is consideration of a resolution initiating the process of adopting a community reinvestment project.
Can you start over again? I have to get that
Oh.
tape off and get the new tape.
Oh, yeah, sorry, Carolyn.
Pause.
Apologize. Okay. The motion and the second had been made. All in favor for,
You're fine there now.
got it? Okay. So now we will be discussing the resolution 2019-01, and that is consideration of a resolution initiating the process of adopting a community reinvestment project area plan by designating a survey area known as the Main Street CRA survey area. And that map has been given to all the council.
Cody Peter is here.
Cody, thanks for being here with us.
It's great to be here.
So take it away.
I just wanted to share a few points about what we're doing tonight, since you haven't done this for a long time. This board has never done this. even though the previous one has. So yeah, go to the next. So the approval process we're going to do today is to adopt the survey resolution. And that just sets the boundaries for the project area, which is on the map here, the yellow boundaries. And it's the same boundaries as the previous RDA project area that was approved a long, long time ago. So that's what we'll be doing tonight. All that resolution states is that we're establishing this area and we'd like to have a project area plan drafted and a project area budget developed, which is what I will do in conjunction with your staff. And we'll bring that back in the next month to review. To get this done before November, which is what we'd like to do, is get it done before November so we can have the money next year. We would like to have a review meeting in September, not with the full board, but with maybe enough that you don't have to have a public meeting, and with a few of the taxing entities. And we can discuss that more, Ryan, offline. We'd like to bring that plan and budget to the members, discuss what it says. The most important thing is, how is the money going to flow? If you're a property owner on Main Street and you want to use these new design standards that IBI created as part of this project, how do they get access to funds and have the ability to do that? So we'd like to develop that over the next couple of weeks.
Can you explain just a little bit about, now it's tax incremental financing that will be applying in this area,
Yep.
correct? Can you explain to the council and maybe the rest, just
Yeah.
quickly, how that works?
Yep, let's do that. Let's go to the next slide.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're smart. So CRA funding, how does this work? Tax increment is a geographic area where you collect taxes for a specific period of time. Usually that's 20 years, and the maximum amount is usually 75%. That's like the industry standard. You can do anything you want, but that's generally what is used. So if you look at the chart, you can see that the blue represents the current value of the property. And the value of that property will stay the same. And everyone who has a tax levy will levy against that same property, the same value, and receive the same amount of taxes that they always have. And then when someone comes and invests in the project area, that additional money above that will be split. In this case, we're showing 75% will come to this board to use, and 25% will flow to all the other taxing entities. And at the end of the project in 20 years, all of that money, the value, the taxes from that new value will flow to all the taxing entities. I went through that relatively quickly. Does that make sense?
So basically, the sales tax that we're paying now as property tax that we're paying, right? Sorry, that we're paying or receiving now is X. And as those property values increase, whatever the difference is, we'll get 75% of that flowing back into the city. Does that make sense? So.
And then 25% will go back to all the taxing entities as we grow. So we can revenue to that.
So Duchesne County School District, Central Utah Water, Duchesne County Water, mosquito abatement, all those.
County.
Yeah, Duchesne
And
County.
city.
All those entities will have to agree that all the excess or extra that is gained above and beyond this point will flow back. 75% of that will flow to the city for that.
That's right. To this board, to the RDA.
Right. Yes.
I can ask a question as a citizen. That looks like
Sure.
my property where I live might be involved in that area, which I wasn't sure, but it looks like it probably is. If I stay living in my house for 20 years, my taxes won't change unless I sell it and another entity develops it into something else. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, this is really a tax diversion. So you'll pay the same amount you've always paid. It'll just go to a different place.
Well, and I think what you're meaning is if your taxes will increase, and actually no, your taxes won't increase as property values increase, whatever that from this date to 5 years from now, that increase naturally would be, that portion would flow to the RDA. And so it's not going to affect it won't affect anybody's taxes in that area.
It doesn't add to anybody's taxes.
It doesn't add. It's just taxes, property tax may increase in those areas over time, but as it does, whatever increase that is, 75% will flow back to the city for the next 20 years. So it doesn't really affect what anybody's paying in property tax. It just affects where the money flows as it's collected.
That's great. Now, there is sometimes concern that, you're raising you're choosing to raise my taxes, no, not unless the city, and you go through the formal process, with one wrinkle that I'll share here in a minute. But let's go to the next slide and show the impact. So the funding of the project. So let's say you're a business on Main Street and you say, I want to put in $50,000 worth of improvements on Main Street to my property to put on a new facade. Generally, the tax rolls show about 80% of that value actually coming on the tax rolls as a general rule of thumb. Usually it's not 100% on 100 cents on the dollar. And if you look at the tax rate for 18, I guess I could have used 19 now. Those are not approved yet, but they're available. But the 18 rate for all the taxing these together is 0.01608. So the new revenue from $40,000 would be $643. And 75% of that would be 482. So right around 500 bucks. So that's what would be available to someone who put in $50,000. We can tell them we have access to $500 to help you offset those costs. So it's not a lot of money. It's something we can help them with, but it's not going to be this big home run and they're gonna say, yes, for 500 bucks, I will totally put in 50. But it is a little bit of help, and there are other loan funds that we can tap into. But I just wanted to make sure you knew that's the amount we're talking about if we just do a traditional RDA like we usually do. Now, there will be additional property values that will increase in the total area if we choose to only use that on Main Street and not the rest of the project. Then you can have additional monies, but that may not be the wisest way of doing that. But just want to make sure you're not thinking that this is a huge amount of money upfront. Although there is a way to do that. So let's look at the next slide, Ryan, if you would. There is a way for you to gain money right now. So I looked at the project just quickly, that map. It's worth about $100 million. We could lower the base rate. So instead of having, that blue line was 100 million, we could pull that down to 85 million. And all of a sudden you have 15 million worth of value that could be part of that above the line amount.
How do you do that?
You just agree to that. All the taxing entities would have to agree to do that. What that would mean is then there would be a tax shift. That would mean there would be an artificial.
An immediate tax shift.
An immediate tax shift. So, for example, in the city, everyone else, if you had a $200,000 home, it would be like a tax increase. It'd be $1 per month tax increase that would give money to the RDA board to be able to have, in this case, $180,000 that you could then use as seed money to do grants or to do loans, have a revolving loan fund. But everyone would have to agree, all the taxing entities would have to agree to that, including you as the city. When you're in your other meeting, you have to agree to do that. And it would be like a 50-cent increase per month if you were to the school district. So that would be the impact to a homeowner who had a $200,000 house.
What type of an overall shift? Have you run projections to see what that reallocation would actually be on the entities? I mean, do we have some that are?
It would be, so the tax shift would be neutral because everyone in the city would pay an additional $1 per month, roughly. And so the way that Utah tax rate is set is as property values increase through appreciation, your tax rate goes down, except they pull out the value of the RDA first. And so if you lowered that base rate, it would push up the tax rate in the city's rate and the county's rate and the school district's rate just slightly so that you would receive additional funds. So I call it a tax shift. You could call it a tax increase that is not done through the normal process.
And we're not talking about doing that tonight, right?
No, not at all.
All right, it doesn't say, we better have a public hearing.
No.
As
This is just, I wanted to make sure that this was brought to you.
an
because-
option.
Yeah, because $500 is not a lot of money if someone's gonna invest 50,000. But if this was something palatable to you and to other taxing entities, you could say, hey, let's not do it for 20 years. Let's only do it for 5. And we'll get this money and we'll create a revolving loan fund. And that money will stay in this project area in perpetuity. As long as people keep repaying us money, we can just have that as a revolving loan fund and it'll stay there.
Is there a possibility to do something similar to what CIB does, but on a miniature level, meaning we have a revolving loan fund, but then we have also a grant match so
Yes.
that we could split that
Absolutely.
and then just do a little bit of grant and then a loan, a low interest loan, so that it would make it feasible.
You
For
could do it
people
any
to-
way you wanted as the board. Yeah. You could do 100%.
I like that
grants if you
idea.
wanted. Yeah. So this is a little bit unique. It's not been done very often in Utah. And the only reason I brought it to you is because by $500 a month a year just really isn't going to encourage people to invest. But if you could give them a grant or even like a down, we'll give you your down payment. If you go to the bank, we'll give you that 20% down to help you do that. At least it's an option. So it's easy for me to tell you these options. I don't have to take the political heat. But I want you to be well informed of what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, and we don't take political heat as long as we well inform the public and allow them to make that, be a participant in that decision.
So that's really all I needed to share today. There's one more slide, which is how you could use that, which is just what you're saying. It could be a revolving loan fund where they directly borrow from you. It could be matching grants, so you could provide like a down payment assistance, or you could give them any list of, between those full grant or any mix that you felt. And then you would have a formal agreement with them as well. So you could say, if you want to have a loan from us, then we want you to follow the design criteria that we've spelled out, and we want you to make sure you keep your property looking nice, and you at least have a little more say in what they do with their property, because you're giving them below market, loan or a grant or something. So that doesn't have to be spelled out today. It'll be in the documents that we create after you approve the resolution. We'll put in the plan, the budget, how this will work, and then when we bring it back, we can say, is this what you want? Have you thought through it? Does it seem like a good idea? And we can move forward in whatever direction the board chooses.
Well, it is being approved tonight.
The resolution.
The resolution to identify the boundary, right?
Demographics.
And as we go, this boundary could change smaller, but not larger later on. So if there is anything else you want to include, we could draw it larger. But down the road, if we have negotiations with some of these entities and say, oh, I really want you to take this and that out, we can take them out, but not add some in. So this should be as large as we want to start with.
My only question is, when I was looking at the boundaries, I didn't understand why it didn't go any further east. Does that make sense?
Click on the bottom.
Who's up here?
Yeah.
West,
Uh-huh. That's east.
I think that's.
that's a county line.
Is that
It's
it?
the border of the city.
Just slightly farther, so.
Yeah, I was gonna say the county line's slightly farther over to the east.
But the intent is for it to go to the city.
Is that the,
I think that is, this is the same map that was approved the last time. That's
Yeah.
where this came from, it was just the same one that was done before.
I'm just thinking, because that's the college, and then you have the college and you have quite a few, you have Mountain America, you have several entities that are there in between the college and the actual border to Ballard.
That
Would
would
we,
be one we could do, right?
Absolutely. There's nothing, you haven't approved anything yet, so we can make the map whatever you choose. What I would say for information purposes is when you meet with other taxing entities, especially the school district, there's going to be a natural desire for them to say, why are we doing this? I came on the school board because I want to educate kids. And why am I now involved in economic development? And the response is, that is what it is. But when you're negotiating with them, they may say, that is just too big. That's like half of your city, and we want you to shrink it. So what Ryan is saying is, great to make it big, but just know that ultimately, if we decide we can shrink that all the way down, they say, if you're only trying to get Main Street in the middle of town, why don't you just carve out Main Street in the middle of town? If that's the case, we'll say, if that's what you want, then we can certainly shrink it, and it's not a big deal. If they want to add property, that's when then we have to start this whole process again.
Yeah, that's, when I heard that, that's why I was thinking, well, let's just get that other piece and then we can work back. But,
We sure could. That was part of what you want to do. We sure could.
well, it's not for me, it's not a big deal. It's just,
Hey, Ryan, does this encompass a certain zoning category? Is that on zoning lines, or is that just
Not
a?
necessarily matching zoning lines, because it does include some commercial and some PO&R. So it does include a variety of different ones.
It's not, it is not based on that.
Okay.
We could, but it's not exactly that type that way. A lot of our commercial does fit in this.
What's this area over here, south of State Street to the west? Okay, there's a south. Stewart's, and then we're back over here. Where's Yak's Honey House?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So, and I agree, because this is our beginning point, and we may be negotiated back to whatever. And like I said, if we include that to the right, it's not, I was just thinking, if we're going to do it, just do as.
Well, I think your observation makes sense to me. On the north side of Highway 40, or 3rd or 2nd north, running that all the way over
To the border.
to the city border would make sense, just on the north side. The rest of it, you're getting into
The college.
district and the college and those
Yeah.
things.
Can we approve that change with this map tonight?
Yeah, just verbally and we'll add it maybe.
I have just a thought. On 5th East and 1st South, I believe that the Killian was planning to put that recreational facility there. I noticed it cuts out that property. Do you think it would be a good idea to bring that over? Or?
You know, it might be good to bring it all the way down to the trailer park. We're talking about some development. Might be good to include the whole trailer park, because it has a lot of room to grow.
All right.
We're willing to do whatever, it's just, this is the starting, so.
Cody,
we had what we're doing, so.
You've done these deals before. So we're talking, as we're talking about adding areas and things like that, what does that do to the perception of those taxing entities as far, is it good to go that much bigger, or does it just put them off and say, absolutely not? I mean,
I think that you should be prepared as your first in negotiations to say, we're willing to shrink this down. We made it large because we don't know exactly what's going to happen. But if we walk in with the design criteria for Main Street, say, we would really like to upgrade Main Street, make it look nice. And they look at the map and say, that's a pretty big Main Street. You're going to go all the way from the drive-in all the way to the Ballard line. I thought you just wanted to do the core Main Street. That should be your first to say, you're right. That is where we really want to. So let's shrink those boundaries down and make you feel comfortable. And then if something comes up, let's say the trailer park does want to do something, and it seems like, man, it would be good to give them some increment. It'd be good to give them some incentive to show we support them. We can create a new project area in the future and go through the process again, and we can do that.
any other thoughts? So I guess the questions on the table are, I think we all agree that we should add the north part of Main Street, or 2nd North, to the border. Do we incorporate the trailer parks, or do we save that for a later date?
Does it hurt to add it and negotiate it?
No.
I mean, I could see some entities perhaps prefer to leave that in there and cut other areas. Is that going to hurt us in some way? If we have negotiations?
Whatever we can get, I think we'll be happy with, honestly.
Yeah.
I'd propose that. I'd propose we take in that trailer cart. I'd also propose that we shift that line over to State Street that's running down, just to take that other half a block in. And
Now what?
so I look at that as a main corridor, whether you're on Highway 40 or on State Street's a main street in the city of Roosevelt.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we're talking about. Is
So
getting
you're
those-
talking about
Pushing
taking
that to the west.
taking the
Yep,
west half
right
of
there.
state, that
Yep.
houses and
This is State Street right here.
Yeah.
Okay, excuse me, I'm looking at the wrong one. So
So that is about 3rd or 2nd east.
Yeah,
I would just prefer we get it on the street instead of out, like on that one down there where it's primarily residential.
To match the State Street,
Yeah, I was looking at the wrong one. Or I'd maybe even just slide it over one.
match it to this one, which is second.
Yeah,
So match the second.
Match to 2nd or slide it back to 1st.
I would move it over to the property line west of the street to the east of State. I don't know if that makes sense. I think that's what,
1st east.
1st East. I think we should move it to the property line just west of 1st East, because there's several homes there. Well, I don't know.
Well, it won't matter.
Is it, okay, it doesn't matter.
And the one thing they're aren't gonna want, most tax unions don't like residential, especially the school district, like what are you trying to incentivize residential? Even though you're not, they're just like, why is it in there then?
Okay.
So excluding residential is probably a good thing.
So move it back to State Street. That would eliminate.
Because if you move it to the boundary of the houses on First East, the west side boundary, then you have businesses past those
So
boundaries.
basically
It
on the-
seems like most of to the west,
Just opposite of where you have it on,
like
on
right
the
where your
east side of the
cursor
road.
was. Yeah,
Yeah.
like right there. But I don't know, it's hard to know without going out there and looking because could be missing something. But
And the trailer park is considered commercial where they're, I mean, and I'll be honest, that would be a fantastic thing to look to improve our trailer parks. Because it is good to have low-income housing, but it is a great thing to have that look nice. And so,
That's a good trade.
so I'll try to summarize what we've discussed. So the motion would look something like that we would approve the map how it's designed, except I don't even know how to make that motion. Do you want to write that down?
I just thought with the change in the boundary as discussed,
Okay,
but you could possibly put everything.
that's a good idea. That's why you're here, Carolyn.
Experienced recorder right there.
Yeah. So anybody willing to make that motion?
could we put on the minutes for the next meeting, the new boundary, just so that we can see when we approve the minutes? Or have a visual, or are you gonna, how would we write that in the minutes so that we can verify that what happened was what we
I'm gonna take
expected?
this map, make an adjustment, and we could add that to the minutes so you can have it.
Okay, so we could sort of see, make sure that what we said is what actually happened, or what we expected.
Or we could add it as a agenda item because it'll actually have the city council rather than the RDA meeting.
We won't have to necessarily
So-
motion to approve it, but we can
Just verify that.
verify that
Oh,
it
I
was
see.
accurate.
Yeah,
And it
okay, you're
doesn't
right.
even have to be waiting for council. You can-
I-
So I'm going to attempt real quick just to make sure that we have a complete understanding. So we have the north side of Second North from where the current boundary ends to the border that's going to be added. We have the trailer court going to be added that we all agree upon where the trailer court is. And then the boundary line that is just passes First East to the east will be moved to the west, opposite of where it's located on the east, basically. So is that what everybody understands?
So, let me see if I can just draw this out a little bit here. Moving that line over to include the trailer park.
How about that? Yeah, that includes the other apartment complex down there.
Is that what you want? Is that okay to add that?
Yeah.
And then adding this going
No, just north of,
Just on the
Second
north side of 40.
yeah.
just over.
Everything else is a school or college or, except for Pizza Hut.
Okay. So that adds this section here. It adds this section here. And it moves this and removes this section here.
Yep.
I believe I have noted that correctly.
Okay.
So if that's what you're looking for, I think I've got my notes, that I can make that adjustment.
All right. Any other questions? Thanks, Cody, for that presentation. Seeing no questions, would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilman Baird and a second by Councilman Waite. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously. Now,
What we will need is a motion to adjourn this meeting.
right,
Is it-
so
Thank
now we
you.
will entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting and to move back into regular session.
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion by Councilman White and second by Councilman Burdick. All
I'm
in,
not a councilman in this meeting.
Oh, who are they? Member White and Member Burdick. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes, and we'll consider ourselves back in regular session. Next, we have the Arts, Parks, and Rec appointments. I appreciate Councilman Burdick reminding me to get those out. I've been really busy and trying to get everything set up on these is not a simple thing, but it's been a good process. And so those were given out to the council. And do you have a copy of those?
I was gonna look to see if I can pull those up. So,
Okay. So what we did with this, it'll be a 3-year term, similar to planning, zoning, or economic development. And we have staggered certain people. It doesn't mean that they only serve for that. You know, there's a 1-year period, 2-year period, and 3-year period. Doesn't mean that they can't serve more terms. It just means that that's how they start, so that as we reappoint, it makes it much easier. And I went through and created a spreadsheet of every committee that we now have with who's on it and when they're up, except for, will you make a note, the Housing Authority Board is the only one that I don't have information on that I could put into some type of spreadsheet to keep track. So here are the names to be presented. We have Preston Cadlick, Amy Snow, Steve Winters, and Casey Anderson. Now, Casey is, I don't know that it matters, but that could be construed as either a male or female. She's female. We have Shannon Staker, Wendy Nicholson, Rowdy Cloward for a 2-year appointment, Royce Porter, Emily Graham, Philip Bertosh, and Daniel Mockley for a 3-year appointment. Are there any questions or discussion on those who are presented?
The question I had, Mayor, do we have like a vita or a little paragraph of those folks, kind of like where their strengths are? Because we have the arts and parks, so we kind of have some balance in there.
You know what? So what I've done, I looked through all of those, and again, I should have put those out there, but I looked at all of those, so I can show you.
Maybe if you just share with us where
Yeah.
their strengths are.
Absolutely. So I have it kind of, let me get to my documents. And let's see. Arts, Parks, and Rec. So based on the information that I had, each one of them sent in either a resume or a letter of intent specifying what their strengths were and interests were. And based on this, and this is just preliminary how I think it may go, but ultimately what I'd like to do is once we have the committee formed and we have our first meeting to discuss those things with them and say, what are your interests or what are the things that you're passionate about or would you be willing to serve in doing? So this is just, for me, this is just an idea of where my mind was at the time. So basically we would have, where it's an 11-member council, we would have basically subcommittees formed, kind of like we did it with the Economic Development Committee. So each group subcommittee would focus on certain aspects of recreation. And we've kind of split those up in the arts, parks and rec, trails, and others. So, you know, bike trails are the trails that we're working on around town. Other types of recreation that may not be your standard sports or whatever, like things that the library offers to the community. And so for the arts, currently I have anticipated that Shannon Staker, Emily Graham, Amy Snow, and Wendy Nicholson would be a part of that arts subcommittee. For Parks and Rec, we would have Royce Porter, Steve Winters, Rowdy Cloward, and Casey Anderson. So Royce, he's involved with tennis, those types of things. Golf, he likes golf. Steve, he's into softball and those types of things. Rowdy Cloward's into boys baseball. He's the president of the boys baseball. And then Casey Anderson, she's involved with volleyball for young women and women and things like that. So it kind of represents a fairly good thing, but there's other sports and things that we'd want to be included, but that's what we have for now. Daniel Mockley with the With the library would be Trails another. Philip Bertosh on that same committee. One reason we wanted somebody from the, and I'm glad we got somebody from the Duchesne County School District is we're going to be asking them to use their facilities. I feel like the taxpayers pay for these resources, and they're not, I know I better not put my foot in my mouth, but they're not really Duchesne County School District's resources or the city's resources. These are the community resources. And so I'm glad that they agreed to have Philip. He organizes and schedules buildings for them. So he'll be on that committee along with Preston Catholic. So, or that's the anticipated. I don't know really how it will shake out, but that's kind of, as I looked at all that, to give you an idea, there were at least 4 other candidates that came forward. I don't know that I want to mention their names because I don't, and he's given me a no, which is, I'm right on my gut feeling. So, but there were 4 others. I can say somewhere, well, I better not say anything. We'll just say that the ones we chose because they're, all of them were good candidates, but there was some overlap in some of those things and we just had to choose. So any other thoughts or questions? Okay, seeing none, would entertain a motion to approve the appointments as presented.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilman Burdick and a second by Councilman Wade. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. I'm excited. Now I can actually, and again, just because there may be some question or things that I don't know about some of the candidates, I want you to know that it has been customary in the past to possibly swear them in at a meeting like this, but I think it's better to make sure they're appointed first and then contact them after, just in case there might be some information that needs to be presented. Sorry, I'm losing my voice.
One thing on that, we have previously created a website with their contact. Would you like us to do that?
I think that'd be fantastic.
If you'll give us
And
the
I'll get you
contact
on.
stuff,
Yep.
We'll put that together on the page.
Okay, that'd be fantastic. So, yeah, I'll get that to you and go with that. Thank you. So, I'm looking at an old one, I think.
Oh, yeah, there's here.
Because I was going to say the Economic Development Committee appointment. So we had a member of the Economic Development Committee resign due to time constraints and those types of things. And they served on the Business and Community Subcommittee. And so with that opening, Jerry Slight has come to many of the meetings. He does fit in that realm. He's been very helpful and providing information and participating, and would present him to be approved to fill that position in that subcommittee on the Economic Development Committee. Any thoughts? Questions? Seeing none, would entertain a motion to approve him to be a member of the Economic Development Committee and to serve on the Business and Community Subcommittee.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
We have a motion by Councilman Baird and a second by Councilman Burdick. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Let's see. The primary election canvas. The moment everyone's been waiting for.
All right, so Carolyn explained that the purpose of the canvas is to give you as much information as possible about how the election ran so that you're able to address any questions that may come to the council. You function as the board of canvassers, so at the end of this, we will need you to certify the primary election and just state that you accept these election results. So the state changed a policy on us this year, which changed some of the things that we did in regard to the election. In years previous, they have given us voter signatures that we had on site at the city so that we could check those at the time that we were counting ballots. they have now changed their policy and they will not allow voter signature information to leave the county. It has to stay within the county's purview. So instead, I got to go to Duchesne 3 times to verify voter signatures with Joanne Evans. So I spent some time over at the county offices, and we are hopeful that with the general election, we may be able to get them to put their program on a computer at the Crossroads Center, since it is a county facility, that we may be able to have that closer to us to cut down on that drive. But what that meant for us is that we were able to count all of the ballots that we had by 11 a.m. on election day, but everything that came in after that had to be counted later. So we did have, you'll see here on your total ballot count, that we had 137 ballots that were counted this morning that Carolyn and I counted together. Those were the ones that came in by mail or the ones that came in after that 11 a.m. after I went to Duchesne. Everything that came in on election day or after. But all of those signatures were verified. They were checked with the county, and the county clerk did oversee that process, just so you're aware. So we had 2 election judges. We had Ruth Ann Green and Andrea Harper who came. We also had Tyson Guyman, Bruce and Amy Guyman's son, came and hung out with us for the count. He wanted to be an election judge, but is a little too young.
He's a funny kid. He's all about politics.
Yeah, we had some very interesting conversations. Good kid. So he came and hung out with us for the full voter count, which went very, very smoothly, since we couldn't keep proceeding with the ballots that we had because we couldn't verify signatures. So it only took us about 2 hours. It was a very, very smooth election day, which was good because I've never done this before and it was terrifying. So we counted those. We had one person opening envelopes and separating the ballot from the envelope so that every vote remained anonymous. Then we had a second person reading those, and then we tracked those electronically on a spreadsheet that John Zillis built for us, which you're looking at the count here. We also have the actual spreadsheet. If any of you would like to see that, I'd be happy to send that to you if you want to see the actual document that we used, but we just used a tallying system that totaled all of the votes, and it had a couple of, yes, go ahead.
Just a question. Did Ruth Ann Green help in the last election? I think so. She's a pro.
She is.
Yeah,
She
I
was
remember
very,
her.
very helpful.
Yeah,
I
so
was glad to have her.
anyway, I got thinking that she's not new to this either.
Yes, she's a veteran, which was good because I am not. So she was very, very helpful. So what you see here is the final count. I've listed for you the total ballots that we had counted as of the day of the primary election. We had 713, and then we counted an additional 137 this morning, Carolyn and I, which means that we had a total of 850 ballots that were returned to us and counted in this election, which is really good. We had a voter turnout of about 34%, which Joanne tells me is just astronomical for a primary election. So that's great. We're thrilled about that. For reference, we do have 2,400 active voters, so still not amazing, but apparently for a primary is pretty good. So how this shook out is that we had Don Busenbark with 484, followed by Cody Allen with 400, Aaron Waite with 336, Rebecca Pittman with 333, Vince Riley with 329, Joe Burdick with 295, and Lamar Eldridge with 106. So the way that this primary election works, we have 3 open seats. We can only have in the general election 2 candidates per seat, so one person needs to be eliminated in this primary election as we head into the general. So based on these results, Lamar Eldridge will not be continuing to the general election.
Gotcha.
I
Thank
think
you.
that's it. Do you have any questions for me?
Just one correction. I think you said 336 on Aaron Waite, and it's 376.
Oh, yes, I
Did I
apologize.
catch that? Okay.
Yep.
Anyway,
At the end of this meeting, we will email out these final results to all of you, to all of the city employees, to all of the council candidates, so that they have an official copy of this. We'll send it to the lieutenant governor's office, and we'll also give it to the media.
great. Thank you
Yeah.
for doing that. And I'm sure that wasn't a fun process for the first time, but appreciate you doing that.
It's the worst thing I've ever done. Can't wait for November.
I smiled the whole day.
Are there any questions?
So we need a motion to certify the 2019 meeting.
Okay. Would entertain a motion to certify the 2018-19 canvass of the primary election.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Motion by Councilman White and second by Councilman Baird. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Next item is the council mayor access to city information. So this is something that I put on the agenda, and not too long after that, we had an email come out from our city manager that also helped clarify some of this. And so I don't know that we need to spend a lot of time on this, other than, do you have anything to mention on that, or you saw the email that came out? And
I did, yeah. All I would say would actually be very simple. Just the state code specifies that the mayor has the ability to access documents and information. And then in our ordinances, the city council retained the ability to get information themselves. And so that's all we were clarifying, is that all of you have the ability to go to city employees to obtain information, but not to give them direction on how to do their jobs or anything. That still falls under the city manager, the way that you guys have delegated the authority. I just wanted to point out that you retained the ability still to access information when you did designate that authority.
Great.
Right?
Any other? Yes.
How much information is available to the general public directly from the city rather than through the public information director?
Well, I don't know if I understand the question exactly. So
If I decide that I want to come in and say, look at the financial.
okay, now I see what you're saying. Yeah, so we're a public entity, the government's a public entity, so all that information is available to the public, but normally the normal process to access that public information is through a GRAMA request. So, and Grant could probably speak to that a little bit if you wanted, but it's a paper form that you have to fill out, and you have to do a formal request of the information that you would like to access. And for the most part, that has to be given unless there's certain provisions and or stipulations that they could limit or hold back some information. Can I say something?
Why would there ever be any information that would be held back from the public other than confidential information with people or property or contracts?
And I don't think there would be. Grant, could you speak to that?
That would be what GRAMA would hold back, would be those types of things that you were describing. Another one that can be held back is if there is something that would affect public safety. There are things with the police department that would be held back. But the GRAMA statutes are just providing the method by which you make the request and the city responds. It has timelines and all that on how quickly they're to respond. So it is meant to be a tool for the public to obtain the information, and sets guidelines for city employees on how and when they have to respond.
And, one thing, and then I'll let Dave respond, but there's also you have the Utah Public Notice website as well. And so there's certain information, financial information, and other information.
Transparency.utah.gov.
Yeah, is another one that you can go to and you can access. So each government entity should report certain information to the public on a regular basis. And you can access that information through those websites. Without GRAMA, it's just available.
Now, another question would be, does the city council have the right to pass an ordinance that would be more transparent than everyone having to go through a paper trail to ask to just find out where we stand with the water fund, say?
You know,
Why would the city council not want any public, any citizen to be able to walk into the financial director and say, hey, how do we stand on water?
those are good questions. I don't know if we could do an ordinance, but just I think these questions could be discussed one-on-one and talk about some of those things. And I don't mind talking about them here, but yeah, I mean, you bring up some good points and good questions, but I don't know. I've never thought about an ordinance that would allow the public to just come in and access
Well, you could
information.
attend a city council meeting when we're covering those
Yeah.
subjects,
Well,
budget
I don't
meetings,
think you would want to
and
do that in a city council meeting based on, there might be a lot of it during the week. It might take a lot of your time.
well,
Yeah,
that's
I think-
fine.
I mean, but it was okay. I was just wondering because when I was on the city council, it was an open book. If somebody was interested in any particular part of the city and they wanted to get some info, they could come in and ask the financial director or whoever and get that information because it's without it being redacted.
And I don't know that there's anything in place that says that you couldn't, but you could be required to. Does that make sense? So if it's information that you wanted just to have, I don't see any reason why somebody might not do that, but just know that they could require you to do that. Is that fair?
Yeah, one thing that grandma does though, as I was trying to say before, with setting timelines on when things have to be given, is it can be an interruption to the duties that the employees have on a daily basis. And so it's hard for them to just take walk-in business for people who are trying to gather information. And so it's more efficient to get the grandma request for the employees, and then you'll still be given the information, or whoever requests will still be given the information, but it's just when they're able to fit it into their.
Well, I don't want to get into a real discussion, but to me, that's pretty one-sided. I mean, if I want some information that is kind of time critical for what I want for,
You can request it to be expedited in your
like right now.
petition. If they have time, they might, but if they don't, I mean, they have to make a decision between what else they've got and take over.
And I think a good thing in what we're trying to clarify tonight is that as city officials, we do have that access to access that information, you know, at any reasonable time, it states, at any
Yeah,
reasonable time.
And that's a good thing to point out, is that even for these guys, there may be some timing issues, that it might not be immediately depending on what the employee is doing. It does have things in there that say reasonable times, or that the employee will respond in a reasonable.
But to me, that's taking away common sense. If we've got a mayor or city council that doesn't realize that there are times when an employee just doesn't have time to do that, then they shouldn't be where they're at, in my opinion. But if they have reason to gain that information, I don't think they should have to wait a minute. Because that's why we elect them. That's why they're there, is to have that information, and that's what they're overseeing, is that information in that city.
And I think just what we're talking about is good clarification of what we're able to do, and within the realms that are allowed, not only afforded us as the city officials, but also afforded the public, so.
Yeah, I'm just giving my own opinion.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I work for the federal government on my other job. And we get requests from legislators all the time to provide information. And it takes some time to gather that information, to compile exactly what it is that people want to see sometimes. So
I don't think that's relevant in what I'm talking about.
well, what I'm saying here in the city, there could be, if you're asking, like if we go to an employee and it's just a, hey, let me look real quick. And that's not a problem. They're going to do that for us. But if they have to get some emails gathered together and gather some information for us, they're going to do that when the time is available.
I'm talking in the general, everyday.
Sure.
I'm not talking about big elaborate gathering of information.
Okay.
I'm just saying, hey, I woke up this morning and I thought, I wonder how we're doing with the roads department.
And you might call the road department, he probably might tell you, and then he might say, you know what, hey, you might.
And if he were to say, hey, it's none of your business until you go through all these processes, I would be offended.
And I can understand that. So back to the item at hand, is there any other thoughts or discussion amongst the council on that? I think it's fairly straightforward, and I appreciate the clarification that has been made on that. So if nothing else, we'll move forward to the next item, the social media policy discussion. So on this, this is something that I put on there, just observing kind of, our interaction with the public and those types of things. I came and visited with city manager and also the city attorney about some of the things. First and foremost, I have to say, I think Lee Nicole is doing a fantastic job getting the information out there to the public as it relates to events, happenings in the community, those types of things. It's phenomenal what she's been able to do. With some of that though, and with any media, especially I feel social media, there's a danger or some eggshells we have to walk on when we start putting other types of information out there. And so as I met with the city attorney and Ryan about these things and just brought forward some thoughts or ideas on how to kind of mitigate some of the negative impacts that some of those other stories could have. We had talked about possibly forming some type of a policy that would address those certain situations. Grant, maybe you can kind of no, thanks, Carolyn. Talk about that, or do you want me to kind of share with what some of the things that were suggested, or what are your thoughts?
I don't mind if you share the things that were suggested. My feelings on having a policy is I want one, and so that everybody knows exactly what the public information officer is expected to do, especially the public information officer. And then if there's any question about something that's posted, then she's able to fall back on that and say, well, this is the direction that I have. Right now with adding the policy, she's doing a good job, but she doesn't have that in black and white to fall back on if something that she's posted is questioned. And so that's the main reason I want it, is it's hard to follow a policy if you don't have one. So I want to get the policy. I'm far less concerned about what the policy you guys decide on is.
Some of the things that we discussed were some of the more, we saw one of the, like a poll, how that could be kind of, I don't know how you would explain that. It could be very controversial or very heated, I guess would be the thing. Or as it relates to educating the public on ordinances or policies or anything like that, those are some things that may be a question. And then another thing that was identified is like the press release that went out not too long ago, which we did get a copy of, and I do appreciate. So some of those more sensitive subjects, or when it diverts from just general information of day-to-day activities, and then as it relates to more controversial or heated types of things, I tried to identify and separate the two and say, these are ones that need absolutely no oversight whatsoever. And these are some that maybe we ought to have a group or, Lee, the city manager, and maybe a few of us to look at and say, let's think about those, talk about those, and even with our city attorney.
Yeah, and even if it's not like a high profile thing or something like that, like one of the things we had talked about was just having the people who are responsible for that area. For example, with conditional use permits, planning and zoning, having a representative in something that's going to be posted.
Right. And so those were the thoughts. And another thought along with that is once we decide as a committee or a group to allow something to go out to the public, we've taken the opportunity to make sure that that's really what we wanted to say. That's what we intended to say, and that's how we intended it to be. And so once that goes out, there would be a restriction then of not engaging the public on those posts afterwards, as far as trying to make any further clarifications or anything like that. We just put the information out there. The public will react how they will, and then we don't get into altercations or discussions or things with the public on those.
And that would be like in comments on Facebook or something, and that's not necessarily saying that if it's interpreted differently that was intended, that there wouldn't be a follow-up release later on clarifying, but it would go through the same process that the first one did. Right.
And one of the things I did talk to my wife about, she's pretty savvy on Facebook, is there is an area where you can turn comments off. So I believe, like, if you put out a press release and you just didn't allow comments on it, it's just information only. And so if they're going to comment, they have to go somewhere else to comment, or on their own personal page or something. But because really that's what those are intended for, not to
Have a Facebook debate.
exactly. Because I think that's where we get
Often the
Comments.
Yeah.
Though the other side of that is the comments do give you guys additional insight on what. the
Which is true.
public's thinking. So regardless of whether you agree with the comment, I wouldn't necessarily
Restrict it.
they're bad, because it still gives you some idea of what at least that particular person thinks, and whether they're in the majority or the minority. You just have to kind of figure
Sure.
out.
We would have to have the restraint of not to. I have a comment and then a comment.
That was just my thought is if there was a way that, say, what we choose to use on social media to disseminate information to the public or get the word out. If there's a way that other people can't hijack that by their comments, not that we don't say, if you have a comment about this, email this person, or instead of giving them the option to put it where everyone else can say, and then that might totally wreck what we were trying to do.
Yeah, and that's what we talked about with the polls as well. You know, we've done surveys before, and if we do polls similar to surveys, and we send that out in email form, so that if they have an idea or a thought, they can say that there, but it doesn't incite other
That's
feelings.
really, I love that we have the ability to do that, but I don't like that other members who may not agree with us can kind of hijack and spread some misinformation about that.
And that's the chance we take, and I'm okay with that. Like Grant said, I'm okay with the comments coming in. I think it looks, when we try to re-clarify and get into debates, then it almost puts us in a more poor position than we were before, because then it looks like we're trying to, and I think, anyway, it's a touchy subject, but you had a comment.
So we've only been doing this for a year, about, and it's been really, really good. So we're still new to this.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm uncomfortable with the idea of a committee approving whatever's released on Facebook. I don't like that, because how long does it take even the 3-person committee to get responses back? Maybe something like if Roosevelt City is going to ask citizens for a comment, that should be decided, or the context. But as far as just announcing that, something's going on and this is this and this and this, I don't want to slow up the transparency process. You know what I mean?
And I don't disagree totally. However, talking with Grant and visiting with him, and we both, I feel the same way, is that we should proceed very cautiously when we're, go ahead.
You would be able to say in the policy, though, if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly, Councilman Burdick, is that things like announcing events or something that a committee doesn't, and you can specify that when we create the policy, or carve out exceptions. There doesn't have to be a committee that meets on everything. I think what we were talking about with things like that is if, say, there's something that would normally be within the purview of planning and zoning, and we were doing a press release on it, so something a little bit different than just an announcement, that then they would be pulled in, and so that we were getting their input before we did the press release. So by press releases, I'm thinking of things like something on a conditional use permit, or something a little bit bigger than just announcements for upcoming events.
Announcing a public hearing.
Announcing public hearings, all those kind of things. I think in the policy, you could just say that she just goes ahead and does it without any oversight.
Right.
I think disseminating information like what we're talking about shouldn't necessarily need to go through a committee, but I think that, like you say, could be written in a policy. I also like the posts that are like, hey, it's a great day to go swim, or, that kind of information. I don't think needs to go through anybody either, because that's the kind of stuff that kind of brings
just general information.
Yeah. And it's good.
Sorry, can I speak to this at all?
Sure.
This is my job.
Yeah.
So let me give you a little bit of information about this. The city has 11 social media accounts. Our Facebook posting schedule is between 3 and 8 times every day on the city's main Facebook page. On the Aquatic Center, we update that 2 to 3 times a week. The golf course updates 2 to 3 times a week. We also have Instagram accounts for all of those same things. The police department functions mostly independently. Occasionally we post out there. We also have the animal shelter. We have a LinkedIn page. We have our YouTube account. We have a lot going on in our social media, so there's a lot happening there all the time. The benefit to social media is its immediacy, is our ability to answer questions as people ask them, to get out information as it's relevant, to let people know about events that are upcoming, to share. We also use it a lot to share good news and to create a safe online community. We've talked about that a lot, about the fact that we're very, very committed to making a safe, welcoming space for our residents. So for me, the benefit to the policy is telling me how to do my job, because at this point, I'm just flying blind here. So that would be great. But the other thing that the policy does that we discussed a little bit as a city staff this morning is that we also have the ability to then protect the community that we've built. Because social media is public record, but we also end up in situations we have not yet in our city, but other cities have faced the problem where you end up with someone who is consistently abusive and harassing on your Facebook page, and you have to have a very clear policy about how you handle those kind of people in order to be able to remove them from that community, because you're essentially cutting them off from one source of information because of their behavior. So for me, that would be a very helpful piece of this, is a way to handle that should it occur. I think that that's something that would be very important.
Awesome. No, that's great feedback. So I think the thoughts and what I'm hearing is we definitely need a policy, and I think we have some good guidelines and some good direction on where to go. I think the best thing would be is to get with Lee, city manager, Grant, myself, and maybe 1 or 2 councilmen might want to be involved with that. But just get together and draft something that we could present in an upcoming meeting that would help specify some of those things and do that. Does that sound reasonable?
Oh, can I also share just one more thing?
Yeah.
For information's sake about our social media. I don't know if you're aware, but we were contacted by the Utah Office of Community Development specifically to come and talk to us about being a community engagement leader in Roosevelt, Utah, or in rural Utah. Specifically because of what we're doing with social media, and not just because of what we're posting, but because of the conversations that we're having. So I would just ask that you keep that in mind as we're talking about turning off comments on our page, about eliminating that, because that's truly what people are looking at, is that our community is talking back to us. We're not screaming into the void. They're responding, and they're sharing good ideas, and they're getting involved in their government, and they care about the city in a way that we haven't seen previously. People are really invested in what's happening here. So I would just like to say, from my perspective, that is incredibly valuable. It's valuable enough that the state is looking at us and saying, how have you done this? How can we teach other people to do this too? I think that's something worth preserving. And maybe not in every case, there may be instances where that's not something we want, but that I think is incredibly valuable and is something I would hesitate to lose.
Thanks, Lee, and I appreciate your feedback on that. And so, you'll be involved with helping design this too. Does that make sense? So just because we want it good, we want the best policy. It's not to, what it is to protect the city, but to do as much good as we possibly can while protecting the city. So that's the intent. And so we'll definitely take those. My thought of turning off the comments is only when it comes to certain press releases, those types of things. Sometimes we just have to let that information fly, in my personal opinion, but that's things that we'll discuss and come up with a policy that really works. And we'll be the leader in that as well, hopefully. Councilman White.
Just speak to that. I appreciate the conversations taking place, and I think we need a social media policy. But I would use caution that it's simple. I mean, I think as far as anything outside, with our social media director posting from the city's perspective, that's what we want her to do. If an ordinance needs posted, post it. I don't want anything to do with it. Speaking to what Mr. Labram's saying, let's get information out there quick. Let's get stuff to people where they can use it fast. I think the only reason that the committee would need to be if we're speaking as a council. If we're having something go out as a council that we want all of us to look at and say, this is our position, then I'd say, yeah. But I certainly trust what's happening with our social media folks and the city's perspective on things that the city deals with all the time.
Yeah, and I don't disagree. And that's part of the reason why I thought it important is some of those more sensitive subjects are really, the council is looked at as being the authority on those, not only authority, but responsible for those. And so I think it's only fair that the council gets to participate to some degree on some of those things that are out there so that we make sure that that's what we want, not what we want, that it's reflected in a way that it is accurate and supports the direction we're headed. So. Any other thoughts? So with that, I guess we'd entertain a motion to move forward with the policy in designing a policy.
We don't need a motion for that. We
Yeah.
need a motion to accept it. not
Right.
accept it.
So we'll move forward in putting together a policy, and we'll meet together
Other
and
cities, we'll see what others do, bring that back, see what resources we can gather together so that
Well-
we can have a good.
on our Tuesday meetings, maybe we'll invite Lee to come and just pencil that out and have a draft for the council, hopefully by the next meeting. Sounds good. Great. Thank you. All right. CP training. It's all you. Grant, thanks for being here with us tonight, by the way.
No problem. The conditional uses have been kind of brought to the forefront recently, and I wanted to come and talk to all of you in fairly general terms about what conditional uses are. And I think one of the ways to help understand what they are is to talk about a few things that they're not, or that it's not appropriate to be using them for. I'd like for this to be a fairly open discussion, so if you have questions or comments on anything, feel free to just speak up. State code defines what a conditional use permit is. I'm not going to read you a lot of code for the definition as a starting point. I think it's important. And this is in 10-9A-103, subsection 7. It says conditional use means a land use that, because of its unique characteristics or potential impact on the municipality, surrounding neighbors, or adjacent land uses, may not be compatible in some areas, or may be compatible only if certain conditions are required that mitigate or eliminate the detrimental impacts. As I said before, one easy way to kind of figure out what it is to look at things that it's not. A conditional use cannot be a way of doing a zone change or creating an island within a zone that there are totally different requirements or different things allowed. Another is that it can't be used as a political tool, like to say that you're going to retain the ability to make a decision later whether or not to allow something based on the political climate at the time, or to take in the future, to take into consideration the public's emotional feelings on that issue. So along with that, it can't be a way of tabling a decision or delaying until the issue comes up, whether or not you're going to allow the use in a certain zone or not. And I kind of covered this already, but it can never be used as a method to try to gauge public opinion later on. There has to be, well, before I move on to that, if really putting a conditional use as an option in the ordinance is inviting that use. If you don't want it, rather than making it a conditional use, it really should just be not permitted. Okay? When a conditional use is made an option within any zone, there has to be very clear and specific guidelines, okay, for what the use is, but then also on how the decision is going to be made. And in the approval process, the way that we currently have it, but it doesn't have to remain this way, is that the Planning and Zoning Commission is designated as the ones who will look at the conditional use permit, and then they make the decision at that level whether to approve or deny it. Part of the reason for that is that the city council, under our current ordinances, is the appeal authority. And so if an aggrieved party at the planning and zoning level wants to challenge the decision, then they're going to come to you. And the aggrieved party is not always necessarily the person who is applying for it. If it's denied, that's who you would expect it to be. But if it's approved, it may be somebody who is impacted by the decision. They would be considered an aggrieved party and then would still be coming to you guys with the appeal. While we're talking about the appeal process, it doesn't necessarily stop with the city council, but it is important to keep you guys separated from the decision on plan and zoning level, because state code makes it clear that the same person or group of people can't make the original decision and then also hear the appeal and make a decision again. If a person disagrees with the decision made on the plan and zoning level, appeals to you guys and still doesn't like the decision, they have the option of filing a petition in district court to be reviewed. And in the district court, the court looks at the record. As long as we have a good record, they'll make their decision based on the record, which could include transcripts, minutes, written findings, and conclusions. If it was recorded, they can consider the recording. If the record is not clear, then the court has to basically just disregard the decision below, can take evidence and makes its own decision based upon our ordinances. Are there any questions so far on the process or comments?
I have a question. So, if somebody applies for a conditional use permit and they meet the requirements and they're approved, or they take it to planning and zoning says, yes, you meet all the criteria, but you can't add conditions, can they? They can't say, we'll approve it because it meets the criteria, but we also want this, that, and the other thing. Okay, just making sure.
Unless it's specified in the ordinance.
Yeah, exactly. They can't go outside what's in the ordinance, which is part of the reason that we need to be very specific in what the conditions can be.
And state code also specifies that if those conditions that are placed in the conditional use are met, you have to approve it. You cannot, it states the verbiage is you cannot deny the application.
Yeah.
Really quickly, go ahead, Val.
I was just wondering, do we not have a board of adjustment?
No.
That really would deal with a different thing. That would be dealing with variances.
The way it's set up.
It used to be that it would go and recommend for conditional use permits too.
Not anymore.
No.
I don't know about the time period that you're talking about, but currently that's not the way.
And I've looked at our ordinances and I've talked to several people and I've looked at state ordinances, and our ordinances they're set up correctly, the way we should be doing things. Now we're just understanding how that process works. And part of the reason is because we are looking at making some changes to Title 17. And part of this instruction, and we'll go to planning and zoning, is making sure that we understand the process and they understand the process, so that as we start to change these ordinances, they're being changed with this knowledge, knowing that we're not going to have to go back and redo this again, but we're making good decisions. So, Grant.
Okay. I think where we had left off was basically saying that the default position is to approve the conditional use, not to deny it. And state code says a land use authority, it shall, and the use of the word shall is important, approve a conditional use if reasonable conditions are proposed or can be imposed to mitigate the reasonably anticipated detrimental effects of the proposed use in accordance with applicable standards. And a couple of the terms that it's using there, applicable standards being one, refers to guidelines in an ordinance that help determine the type and extent of conditions that may be imposed on a conditional use. These standards establish objective goals or levels of performance, which then guide decisions on the conditions which are adopted. And detrimental impacts, I also wanted to look at the definition for. It's the most land uses impact the public's health, safety, or welfare in some way. The detrimental impacts that identified for conditional use should be related to negative impacts on legitimate governmental interest or on the public welfare. And it's not just that there can't be any detrimental impacts, it's just that we're trying to reasonably exactly.
And, as far as the government property tax, for example, if putting something in a certain area would devalue that property and lower the property tax, that's something that would need to be mitigated, for example.
Yeah, that's a good example. There are some things that I think could reasonably be misinterpreted in state code. One is that in the approval process in state code, it talks about a land use authority's decision to approve it or deny conditional use is an administrative decision. And within our own ordinances, the administrative authority has been designated to the city manager. And so I think there was room for reasonable interpretations on whether or not it was the city manager that is supposed to be making the decision and the staff, or the Planning and Zoning Commission. When we took a close look at it, it is right now designated to the Planning and Zoning Commission, but it doesn't have to be. As we're going through Title 17, the plan right now is that I will be meeting with the Planning and Zoning Board tomorrow night, and we're going to talk about these same things. We're asking them to pick up where we had left off on Title 17, because if you remember, you guys had gone through and we had reviewed and kind of revised the first half of Title 17, and then other things have come up and we haven't got to the second half. We're asking them to pick back up and get the ball rolling on that again, and we'll be making recommendations to you guys. But it can be designated to anyone, really. It could be designated to a clerk, it could be designated to the city manager, it could be designated to some type of a committee. It doesn't have to be with the Planning and Zoning Board, but I think that that's a good place, quite honestly, to
Just,
leave.
I don't disagree. And just to give you an example, what Duchesne County does, Mike Hyde, some of these things have been designated to him. He's a professional planner for Duchesne County, and so he can approve conditional uses. He can approve lot line adjustments. He can approve lot splits. There's a certain amount of things that he can approve that are spelled out very directly in the ordinances that he has to follow and able to do that. But up to a certain point, he can approve those, which adds to some efficiency to what we're trying to accomplish. That's one of the things I know that our planning and zoning chair had mentioned is with the conditional uses where it was coming before both parties, it was taking so much time and it was a very lengthy process. And I think there's things that we can establish as a legislative body to put those parameters and those things in there, and then allow the planning and zoning to handle those decisions, or a staff like Dean or somebody like that could take care of those decisions that are very structured, very set in how you approve, and move forward that way. And then if anybody appealed those based on whatever, they could come to us. One thing that he did mention is that if it was denied, there would have to be substantial evidence brought forth to the appeals committee to overturn the decision. He couldn't just come to the city council and with the same information and say, I just don't like their decision. And it would put us in jeopardy to allow a conditional use to go through based on public outcry or popularity or whatever it may be. So we would in turn have to make sure that we adhere strictly to our ordinances and what's written. And just to give you an idea, it can't be a decision of whether we like the idea or not. And even if there's a room full of people that say, we don't want this to happen, and it's kind of allowed, we have to allow it.
Exactly. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because the way that it's referred to is that public clamor can't be the basis of the decision. In fact, public clamor shouldn't even be taken into consideration, which is a difficult thing to do. If a room full of people shows up and they're emotional about the situation, you can listen to them, but you can't base the decision on that emotion. You have to take kind of a cold, hard look at the ordinances, what the standards are, and make your decision based strictly on that. And in that kind of same vein, our ordinances and state law allows for public hearings on conditional use permits, but they're never required. One dangerous thing is what we already talked about, is that it can be difficult for the person who's got to make the decision to kind of set aside or distinguish between public clamor and public comment when they're making their decision. I agree with what JR said about the Title 17 properly lays out the process in that. I think what we really need to look at is the uses and the conditions as we go back to Title 17, which I'll be talking to the Planning and Zoning Board about tomorrow, and then they'll be making recommendations to you guys. But that's kind of the general overview that I wanted to give to you, to kind of put it in the back of your minds that if you don't like the way it's currently set up with planning and zoning, that it doesn't have to be that way. As JR pointed out, with the way that the county does it with Mike Hyde, it could be an increased inefficiency because it's something that he can do quickly rather than waiting for the next meeting. Another thing that I wanted to point out to you is that you don't have to have conditional uses at all. You can just say, look, it's either going to be permitted or not permitted, depending on whether it fits in the zone. And if you decide that you don't even want them in the ordinances, then obviously you don't have to designate anybody to be considering applications.
I think that's maybe where I had some misunderstanding too in our ordinances, where there are specific ordinances that may be not allowed and there was no conditional uses, but we felt like if they followed the process that we could put conditions on there, and I was wrong in that thinking also. And so I was able to educate myself somewhat and talking with Grant and others on how this process really should work. And I think once we get it dialed in how we want it, it should run like a well-oiled machine. It should be very simple, very easy, and it'll work really well. But I think I don't think the planning and zoning, a lot of them understand completely either. And so as we're looking at these things and possibly implementing some conditional uses or putting some things in there, we just wanted to make sure everybody understood how the process worked and what we will be adhering to.
And kind of my plan going forward, and I haven't had a chance to talk to Ryan about this yet, but as I've been reviewing the applications for conditional use permits and things that we've had recently, I'm asking to just be notified when we receive one, and assuming that we don't get rid of them altogether and that it stays with planning and zoning, I would like to participate and help them through the process, make sure that we're following everything the way that we need to. It's not that it's a difficult process. It's just that I want to make sure that we get it established properly. And then once they've been through a few, I don't think that I need to be involved, but am willing and would like to help through the process for a few, just to make sure that it goes smoothly. And if there's any questions that we can address, once they all say they're comfortable with it, I don't need to do that.
Councilman Burdick.
Yeah, I think this is a great discussion to have. And I would hope that we could all agree that there's been so much area that the council doesn't understand, the staff doesn't understand, and they haven't been given clear directives, so they've just kind of done what has always been done, but yet they've been attacked for doing this nefariously by a lot of people. Could we just agree that this was a very vague point and really no one is held at fault as far as doing anything purposely egregious or self-serving in any way, and that we need to clarify this so that it's clear what our position, what zoning position, and what staff's position is, because it's been a huge misunderstanding and there's been a lot of political crap going back and forth. And I just,
Well, I wasn't going to bring it up, but since you brought it up, I'll just speak to that because I've been one to be critical, and I don't think overly critical, but the process as it was, as far as implementing a policy, so there was some concern with the implementation of a policy of requiring CUPs that may not fit within the parameters that we discussed tonight. That in and of itself, to me, is irrelevant. I mean, and Grant and I talked about this, and we agreed that the intent of creating that policy, the intent behind that was a good intent. It was a good motive.
The intent, and I would add to that, if I can interject, that the interpretation of our ordinance as well. I mean, it wasn't like they just, someone came in and just decided to do conditional use permits. That they have looked at the ordinances, looked at the definitions, and were acting the way that they thought they were being directed to by the ordinances. Until you've done a few, they're not a terribly complex thing, but until you've dealt with a few, they can be a little bit difficult to understand, which is why I was suggesting that I go to the planning and zoning meetings when they're going over them for the first few, just to make sure that it's right. But I agree with what JR said, that the intentions were good.
Right. And so I know there was some things fired back and forth. I watched some of that discussion, held back and just kind of watched and really didn't get involved. But when I saw that there was maybe some information that may have been a little bit inaccurate, that's when I stepped up and said, well, hang on just a second. That's okay if we disagree in opinion, but let's make sure that we're providing facts. And that's what I was trying to do, is just make sure that, look, if we make a mistake, which obviously we are, I mean, we're learning, growing, progressing, not only, and the hard thing is we change a lot. So it's an ever-changing thing. We're going to make mistakes. My only thought is, let's just take responsibility for them, say, man, I messed up on that one, let's move forward. And that's it. So, and that's what we've tried to do. I mean, what we're trying to do here tonight is no different. We acknowledge that there's an area of deficiency, and the sole purpose of this tonight is to provide information and to educate ourselves and move forward in a positive manner. So,
and having reviewed the applications for conditional use permits over the last several months, I think that there was need for education on conditional use permits on every level. I think as soon as we have done that, which really I think we're only left with me going to planning and zoning tomorrow night, and there will be a better understanding for what they are, how they're supposed to be used, and who is responsible for each step, and at least clear on where we stand right now. And then eventually, when Title 17 comes back to you guys, if you're wanting to make changes to it, you certainly can. There are a lot of different ways that we can designate people, although the process stays the same. It's just the people that are designated to do certain steps. And that includes, I didn't say this earlier, I talked about how we can designate either an individual or a different group of people to plan and zoning. That also applies for the appeals. You guys don't have to stay on as the appeal authority either, and it doesn't even have to be a group. An individual can be designated to do the appeals as well.
Yeah, in the way that the county has it set up, where Mike Hyde makes a lot of those decisions on CUPs, it then goes to the next appeal level, would be the planning commission, and then it works to the commissioners.
It actually is supposed to go to the court.
Oh, after that one?
Yeah,
Okay.
you designate the person who's going to make the initial decision, and then internally there's the first level of appeal, and then the next level should always be the court.
Any thoughts, comments, or other questions on that?
But I certainly appreciate, the education and that has taken place here today. And I agree with what Councilman Burdick says. Let's make sure that our city administration knows we appreciate what they're doing. And let's move forward and fix it. We're all human. We don't always make it correct. None of us do. But I'm glad we're to the part of solving the problem. That's what
If I could say, I agree also, that, what's happened in the past is really kind of what's happened, as far as that goes. And I don't know if I agree though, on like that this is a political thing. I mean, I guess it is because we have different opinions sometimes, but, I just see it as, good deliberation and people are taking things personal, which I don't necessarily agree with. I mean, I think we should just all be open and honest with each other about what we think's going on, so.
I agree with that. And having considered this from all three levels that we're talking about, I don't feel that anybody was really doing anything wrong or trying to do anything wrong. There were just differences of opinion. And I think as soon as we get through this education process and everybody understands what their role is, that I don't think that's going to be a problem going forward at all.
I'm excited to see what we can do as soon as we get this, like I said, educated and moving forward. It should be, this is something I think has been a mystery or had a question mark above it for a long time of how we proceed on these things. And this is going to help us immensely moving forward. Land use issues are probably the number one most controversial and most important in my mind of the things that we'll discuss, is how people can utilize their property. So
that's all I plan to go over with you guys for tonight. Like I said, it was intended to be kind of a broad overview, just let you know that we're working on it, make sure that you guys understand your role in the process, which currently is as the appeal authority. And then if you want to make changes to the ordinances, those will be coming with recommendations to you shortly. Okay, any other questions or comments?
just appreciate you coming, Grant, and what you do for the city and keeping us straight. So.
Okay,
Thanks, Grant. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Can I be excused? I need to go.
Yes. Thanks for being here tonight. We'll try to wrap it up. So I did see the purchase orders move down the line. Any questions on those?
I'll make a motion to approve, Mayor.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilman Waite to approve,
Second.
second by Councilman Burdick. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously. Reports from standing committees. Do you have anything for us tonight?
No, I don't.
Okay. Should I report on the gun range or would you
Yeah.
like to?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so just quickly, well, first of all, I want to thank the council for the support in approving the appointments tonight. I'm really excited to get that committee rolling and see what we can do there. I'm excited to see that move forward. We have the gun range that we've been discussing intermittently throughout the last, 6 to 8 months. And we're finally gaining a little more traction and making a little more progress on that. We met, when was that? Tuesday, wasn't it?
Tuesday, was it Tuesday?
Tuesday at 1:30 with the subcommittee that's been tasked with helping with that. We are in the process of obtaining and doing a title search to obtain easements and those types of things on the property. So we make sure that as we lay things out, we're not putting anything in the way of or on top of something else. And so as soon as that comes back, we'll meet again as a few individuals and take the suggestions from the committee and put those on a map that everybody can see. As soon as we get that done, we'll bring that back to the committee and make sure that that's exactly what they thought or intended with that. And just one sec. And then we'll move that forward to the engineering stage and also bring that forward to the public for them to see and make sure that that's something that they want to see happen in our community. So excited about that. And yes, sir, you had a comment.
I realize I'm late, way late.
That's okay.
It's just a concern for me.
Yes.
I live over here on 309 North, 100 East, right behind L&L.
Okay.
Kitty corner, there's a little blue house there.
Yeah.
My house has been there longer than any house over in that area.
Uh-huh.
They have put sidewalks in everywhere, but they bypassed mine.
Interesting. Have you visited with our city manager about
Come
that?
in and let's visit, we'll talk about what we can do to help.
Yep, he's the man in charge of that.
Okay, because I know it's well paid for some type of sidewalk. It's been there since 1908.
Gotcha. Okay. You paid property tax a long time. Yeah. Well, get with him and we'll see. We have a master plan that we're doing right now and we'll see how that's.
I know, I go around town and I see everything else getting dug up.
Well, we appreciate you bringing that to our attention. Thank you. I don't have much else to report other than that. Councilman White, do you have anything for us tonight?
Nothing new, just, I think, thanks to UBIC committee.
Yeah.
For good work. Chad Mortensen certainly could use a nice letter from us and appreciate all his work there.
Councilman, anything else? No. Councilman Burdick.
The gun range, you represented that well. Capital projects meeting was very, very good. That's a very good meeting of the managers of each department. And there has been a lot of work going on around Roosevelt City. If you've lived here a long time, you've noticed a whole lot of work going around everywhere. And I feel you. Just a little fact, in the past 4 years, 2/3 of Roosevelt City streets have had some sort of either maintenance or construction, which means chip seal or paving or a reconstruct. And that's huge. It's huge in the past 3 or 4 years. So we're knocking that list down pretty quick. And that means we're getting, closer to getting these roads that were never once paved because of whatever reason over the past 100 years or whatever. And so I think we've got great contractors. I think they're doing a great job. Our engineers are doing a great job. We went from basically one engineering company to 4. And so we've got some really good competition there. We've got grants coming in, on a conveyor belt, just dropping the money in, something like $19 million worth of grants in the last 4 or 5 years. That's a lot. And anyway, the road work, I'm sure it will swing through your way, and that's a good discussion for you to have to see, because I know there's a plan for everything and where that sits. So I think Capital Projects Committee is a good
Rocking and rolling.
committee. Yeah.
That's good. Thanks for the update. Anything else for us?
I don't have anything.
Okay. Yeah, we'll have our city managers report. And
Couple of things to make you aware of. The airport, we had a fair airport, and we have no runway left at this point. We haven't been out there. The runway's completely gone. We have a pile of rotomill. And we're excited because it has been over 20 years. We're able to use that in lots of different areas. You'll see that what we've done with rotomill has been unique over this last year. We have upgraded and improved most of our commercial alleyways. And that's something we haven't maintained with the dirt. We've worked on certain roads, and so we're making some good progress. The chip seal should be almost complete here in the next week or two. And I would note one thing: the sidewalks on Highway 40 are not our fault. We're not doing that job. It's not us. Just be honest. Highway 40 work, not us.
UDOT.
So we appreciate UDOT, but we're not tearing up good sidewalks to replace them with others. So that's not us. Couple of good news items that I would just share with you. We talked about grants and we love to apply, and we've been awarded $40,000 for the Bear Grant to help us with the design and information so we can get ready for that Main Street building we have, be able to design it, be able to help it to be into a co-working space. We have a lot of those that telecommute, and this would be an opportunity for them to come together. And so that's kind of where that leads to design work. We'll proceed with that and bring you a design and show you what's the possibilities and then see where that moves forward. Another one that we have just, we've been fortunate with the Governor's Office of Economic Development. We've been working with them on a number of things. The other one is the enterprise zone credit. You will remember that a while ago we asked for a support and to do that application. We found today that we have been approved for a 5-year term on the enterprise zone credit for our city.
Now, is that only citywide or is that
That is
countywide?
citywide. They used to do countywide, and up till this year was countywide, starting in January. And this goes back to January 1st. We turn the clock back to January 1st. So some of that, if you take a building and you purchase a building.
I can speak to that because I just did it.
Yeah, but the one problem is if the building is qualified, but if it's retail, it's not. It doesn't like retail in the enterprise zone. So if those are separate, that's great. But this is something that for our county, we've seen millions of dollars each year come back as credits back to people that live here, that invest into the area here. It can be employees, it can be construction, it can be equipment, it can be buildings. There's a number of different avenues, but this is a fairly big deal for us. And we took it on quickly when we found out that the county wasn't able to do it anymore. So we're pretty happy that that's been awarded. We just got that letter today. So anyway, we believe that there's lots of good going on. We're learning, we're growing, and we appreciate all the discussion that's been had. And if there's anything we can do for you, we're ready and able. We're wanting to help. We want to help the community grow. Be the best.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. Good news. Let's see. So we're still going through our chapter code by code, or city code. We'll be looking at Title 17 shortly. And you need to go into a closed session. Seeing none, would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay. Motion and
I'll second it.
second. I think it's unanimous.
What was it?
Motion.
Second?
Motion by Councilman Waite, second by Councilman Baird. And unanimous.
Non-debatable.